Welcome to The Swing of Things with Amanda Kraus, a brand new podcast hosted by me, Amanda Kraus, and produced with Row 360. In this episode, I'm joined by two aspiring Tokyo 2020 Olympians, Clark Dean and Meghan O'Leary. First up is Meghan O'Leary, the two-time world medalist and Rio 2016 Olympian who is set to compete in the U.S. women's quad. Hi, Meghan. Welcome to
Amanda.
The Swing of Things.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
And congratulations.
Yes, hot off the presses.
Yeah, in the women's quad, going to Tokyo.
Yeah, I'm ecstatic. So, second Olympic team. First team was in the double, and this is a new experience in the quad. But very, very excited. I think this is a fast group, a fun group, and I think we're gonna go have a good time. But I think we're also gonna put on a pretty strong performance. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, well, we're gonna talk more about that because I know this is recent news and super exciting. But I want to back up a little bit and bring everyone to get to know you a little bit. I know that you grew up in Louisiana. I know that you went to UVA. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the athlete you were when you started at UVA. I always think of you as a little bit unique because you actually have ball skills. And as you know, a lot of rowers, apologies to those of you who have ball skills, but many of us don't. And that's why we find our homes in rowing. But you're one of the blessed few. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about what you went in doing and playing and how you found rowing?
Yeah, right. I was a multi-sport athlete growing up, but nowhere, near. I didn't even know what rowing was until college. My first year roommate at University of Virginia was a rower. But I was a two-sport athlete at the University of Virginia. I played both volleyball and softball. And, prior to that, grew up playing basketball and soccer and track and field. And then rowing didn't become a thing for me until long after I graduated and I'd started working. I was at ESPN and in Connecticut. And during my time at UVA, and I think UVA rowers and people will laugh, but Kevin Sauer, the head women's coach, had approached me and said, who are you? And I'm tall, and we overlapped often in kind of our workouts, whether it was in the weight room or in this gym facility with the rowing team. And I think Kevin just noticed that I was a little bit of a workhorse, and he said, you should row.
I'm sure he did.
He kind of recruited me, and I was like, hey, I'm already playing sports, rigorous academic schedule. Thank you, but no, thank you. I'm pretty busy. But it was intriguing. Obviously they're a fantastic program. The allure of winning an NCAA championship was exciting. But I do, he did say, he's like, you could be an Olympian one day.
Wow.
So it really stuck when someone tells you that, and someone of Kevin's stature and obviously experience. And so later, when I did pick up rowing, he was one of the first people I called and was like, hey, I am actually doing this thing after Googling it. Can you help me? So obviously that was about 8 to 10 years ago, I guess now.
Wow. Okay. And so then you didn't know how to row and you went to your very first learn to row. Is that right?
That's correct.
In an 8 or a barge, or how did that work?
Yeah. So I signed up for 2 kind of learn to row sessions out of Riverfront Recapture, a fantastic community rowing club in Hartford on the Connecticut River. And the first, I can't remember if the first was the sculling or the sweep. It might have been sweeping. And I had to get special permission from work because it was a little bit later in the morning and I would get to work late. And it was mostly with, middle-aged women. It wasn't like a young person, I was not with my peers, let's call it that. I was the youngest one. But it was fantastic. And I remember the coaches, because it was over the summer, the coaches were some of the Yukon rowers. And they were kind of like, who are you? Where did you come from? But it was just a very basic, never having been in a boat, never having held an oar. But I obviously fell in love with it, and it was a great environment to fail fast, but fail, with love and support around me, no judgment. So it was a good time.
I love that. I love picturing you with the middle-aged moms maybe in Connecticut.
Absolutely.
How to row.
Yeah, I almost stepped through the bottom of an 8 the first time getting in the boat. I mean, I was kind of like a bull in china shop, baby giraffe. Just it wasn't graceful for as athletic as I like to think I am.
So, and then how quickly did you go from, learn to row student to, I'm at the training center in Princeton?
Yeah, so Brian Windry was sort of the head of rowing programs at Riverfront Recapture, and he was so helpful in kind of helping me understand how to get into the national team system and what to do. And so the summer of 2010 was learn to row, and then a few months later, I believe it was October maybe of 2010. So, June, July, and then October.
So you knew how to feather pretty well at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe row all eight a little.
I showed up to at the time, and I don't know if they've really had them recently, obviously because of COVID, but they used to have these national team selection identification camps. And this was mostly, held by universities for college kids, U23 rowers, to show up and try and showcase their skills and get into the pipeline for the national team system. And I went to the one in Princeton, at Princeton University. I thought to myself, I want to go where the coaches are headquartered. I want to get in front of, get in front of them to make sure that I have FaceTime and see how I stack up. I believe I was the second oldest, if not oldest, because you have to give your you give your year, you give your birthday, and I remember, you're in a line with all these other, at the time, mostly college students, and I kind of mumbled under my breath the year that I was born so that no one else could hear me, hoping that I blend in. But I told myself, so that's 3 months, after I started rowing, I told myself, if I can make the cut, so it's like 50, there were about 50 people there. If I can make the cut, out of those 50, we did a series of erg tests. And at the end of the day, we got to go kind of trickle down into 2/8 and row in front of the coaches, Tom Terhart and Laurel Korholz, and kind of, be coached by them. And I said, if I make that cut, I will try this and I will go after it full force. And I did. I made the cut.
Amazing.
And it's funny because there's pictures of that camp, that one day camp, and there are people that I've been on a team with in those boats. So like Liv Coffey made the Olympic team this year, and we're in a boat together. So it's really interesting how some of this it comes full circle. And then a year later, I made myself that promise. I committed to it, and I followed through. I bought a boat, never having been in a racing single, raced in every single race I could that following summer. Literally just asked any club if they needed someone to jump in a double, quad, whatever, drove all over the country, and then showed up to a more robust actual invitation selection camp. So you had to be invited. And this was to get into the national team. It was being held in September. So this is 2011. And I got an invite out of that after performing at that identification camp that was longer. I got a direct invitation. I was one of only like a couple athletes to get to come into the full camp, which was really intimidating. That was the Olympic selection camp for 2012.
That's wild. I mean, you were still so relatively new to the sport.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I remember 3 weeks into moving to Princeton, negotiating a remote working position with ESPN, I was working with at the time, and having to figure that all out in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Because
Tom's like, when can you be here? I was like, how long do I have? Because I never expected it. And so I said, give me 3 weeks. And then, I remember a few weeks into being there, Susan Francia, 2-time Olympian, Olympic champion, just like stares at me and is like, who are you?
Where did you come from?
Exactly. So super intimidating, but I was just, so excited. Obviously, you make a plan for yourself, and that was not the plan for myself, that everything would happen that quickly, but you kind of just gotta go with it. So
yeah, how did rowing stack up against, having been a volleyball player, basketball, soccer? I mean, real game sports, right? I mean, so different. I mean, you mentioned some track and field, but it seems like, you really came from a game sports background versus one of those endurance athletes who makes a transition. I mean, how was that for you? And did you ever have feelings of, I wish there were some games involved in all of this, or did you not look back?
Yeah, I still struggle with it. I am better attuned to be on a court, on a field, with a ball in my hand or at my feet. But it was such a new challenge that I could embrace it for what it was. Rowing is like no other sport in that way. And I had to get away from comparing it to what I knew in order to really be able to appreciate what it could offer. And so I think maybe that's cliche or trite to say, but I do think that initially I was kind of comparing it, thinking like, there's a different level of camaraderie. There is so much camaraderie in rowing, but it's very different than softball and volleyball. It's just different. But I think I was comparing them as if they could be the same, but they're very different. And that's what makes rowing so fantastic and unique. And I think what drew me in is it pulled out parts of me that these other sports hadn't.
Talk about that a little bit. How is it different?
So it is something that I think draws upon the individual in very different ways. I was challenged to, I grew up being a perfectionist and could be really hard on myself. And I think a lot of type A perfectionist people find themselves in rowing because of the demand to be very, very focused, very committed to the craft in order to be successful. And this like no other sport, and not to say, all sports do that, but this like no other sport demanded that because, if your catch is off by an inch, like that's seconds over 2,000 meters. It really pushed on me in ways to be a lot more forgiving of myself, to be honest, because you cannot be perfect in this sport, in any sport, but you can demand perfection of yourself, but you cannot, or you will self-implode. And then, the physicality, I obviously all sports are hard in their own way, but rowing is a grind. And I like to work hard. I loved how much it enabled me to fully realize and appreciate the power of my body. And I think that's something that, kind of bred confidence in myself and appreciation for myself in new ways that other sports hadn't. It's incredible what you can do with your body, and rowing really kind of forces you to discover kind of new areas and limits. And I think that was also what really attracted me to it.
That's so interesting because you'd already found a lot of success in these other sports, and it's not as though you weren't really at top of your game in those sports, but that you found something slightly different as a woman becoming a competitive rower, which I always talk about with people. I always say, all sports have this, but I think rowing has this edge. So it's really fun to hear you sort of saying that too. Sometimes I think, am I just biased? I am, but yeah. So, thinking about now you've been, this is not your first rodeo. This is not your first Olympics. You're one of the older, I don't know if older is the right word, more mature.
We can call it that.
You're one of the more mature athletes. How is that, training now with, I don't know what the age difference was with some of the women, competing for seats in the quad, but does that feel different when you're in selection with women who are, a little bit younger than you are?
Yeah. So I've been kind of thinking about this the past few days. So the age difference is about, I think right now the team's not fully named because pair trials are still going on. When this releases, that will be done. But I'll be either like the third or fourth oldest woman on the team. And the two, so Allie and Cicely, the two other athletes in the boat, other than Ellen's a few months older than I am, are like, I don't know, they're like 25 and they're like 25 and 24 or something like that. And so it's 10, 11 years difference. And we were doing some funny math today, right? So, I think Allie or those two actually started rowing. We started rowing, and rowing years were like the same age, but yeah. Obviously like I was a high level athlete in softball at 11 years old, and they were just being born. Oh, right. So it's kind of wild to think, but it makes it really exciting about just, and I feel like there's this opportunity for this, like, what I would love to see, and I think we've kind of been creating this moment or this movement for women's sculling, is that there are some just really incredible senior athletes on the team in sculling. You have Jevy Stone in the double. Kara's been at it for a while too. This is her second Olympics. You have Ellen Tomek, third Olympics, myself. And then you have these young athletes Allie, Cicely. Chrissy is a little older, but this is her first team. And there's just this pairing where it's almost I'll call it like a handoff. But just this, I feel like it's a really exciting time for women's sculling because you're bringing the ones who've been working so hard at getting us to the place where we are, and we're able to partner up, but also just share that experience with the next generation they're going to carry the torch. And I love that narrative for what we're doing and the success that we have the potential of achieving in Tokyo all together. And I think we all recognize that together. And there's something really powerful, I think, about that, is that, it's fun. But yes, they're young. They, I'm not on TikTok. Like, there's just like all the cliches about, old and young. But it's been fun. There's nothing quite like making your first team, and it's really exciting to be sharing that with people who are making their first team. It's kind of like, I imagine, I have nieces and nephews, but people with kids, and like getting the joy and excitement of Christmas, right? With young people, right? And so it's
experiencing that with them, literally in the same boat.
That's what it kind of feels like.
So have you all celebrated as a quad yet? I mean, had a moment or?
Yeah, I mean, we had the day off yesterday just to like breathe. And then today was our first practice, sort of day one of the Olympic quad. And I brought little mini champagne bottles for the girls in
post row or pre-row?
Pre-row, but I said to have that post row. And I think we'll probably plan something this weekend. And we took some time after practice and took pictures and just got really just kind of like let ourselves be in the moment. So yeah, we've had a little bit of celebration.
Good, as you should. You've got to enjoy the journey, right?
That's true. Yep.
And thinking about these women, and I was there at trials and watched you and Ellen in the doubles trial, and just the depth there, and the what's your hope for sculling for women in the future as we look towards Paris and even LA? I mean, you and these others you've mentioned, these other women are leading the way and have this next generation, so to speak, coming up behind you. What's your hope for the future of women in sculling?
Yeah, for the last, since making the double was the boat that I've been, majority of my career has been in since 2013. There's been this in the back of my mind. There's just been, I would love for women's sculling to become what, the 8 has been for so many young women going through junior rowing, collegiate rowing. Like, the 8 is, I want to go win a gold medal. Sculling can be that. We have that depth, and I'm hopeful that the work that, like Jevi and Kara and Ellen and me have done in terms of staying committed to the craft, going and having performances, winning medals, showing that we, the United States of America, can be really good in sculling, and offering that as an opportunity for young women to want to pursue that, because I think it's more difficult because it's not as supported. It's not a big camp system like the training center affords for the sweep boats. But I think, it's not the same as like the 4-minute mile. But once you do it, it's amazing how many more times things can be done. So my hope is that, hey, like, we've proven that women's sculling boats can be successful, and look what's happening in terms of behind us, but these young athletes. The women's quad selection was ridiculously competitive.
Yeah. How long was that?
It went right to the wire, and just days and days and days, multiple pieces.
How many weeks?
Yeah, 6 weeks. It was the full gamut of, use the full length of time. And I think we did, nearly 30 race pace pieces, getting it down to 4 athletes. And it's a super deep group of women. And that's just so exciting. Yeah. It's not as if you have this, we don't have to have a rebuilding year after this year. We have the depth of talent, and I'm hopeful that we as the country and the people that want to support rowing recognize that the 8 is not just the opportunity. Like, we have the opportunity far beyond that, which is really exciting, because I think it's gonna be really special what's gonna happen in Tokyo.
Yeah, I think we're all excited. So going back a year, and I don't know if you don't even like to think about this, but 2020, March 2020, you and Ellen were doing really well, and we're on track to potentially be that double representing us in Tokyo. And a lot of people were we're on track. And I remember texting you when it was announced, okay, no, this is done. We're done. The country is locking down. Yeah. What was your process for, okay, I'm in this for another year? Did you sort of weep for a week? I don't know what happened, or did you say not miss a beat? What was your process?
Yeah. I was obviously like disappointed that, hey, this thing that I expected to happen didn't happen. There's a human reaction. But I was also, there was no question in my mind that wasn't the right decision. So you kind of fall on that side of like, well, of course, this is what we need to do. And then in terms of my plan for myself, it's hard to, you'd put so much time in the results. Ellen and I were going very fast. Yeah. I'm confident that if we'd have trials, and this will be contentious, I'm sure we would have won. We were going fast. We were going well. Things were like falling in place. We were healthy. And then, for that to happen was obviously disappointing because we also felt like that was going to lead to a really great performance in Tokyo. And, at the moment, I was like, of course, like I'm going to continue. I have to see this through. And then over the course of the last year there have been moments where I was like, I don't know, not moments that I can control over. And I mean, it was injury. It was sort of, freak health things that I was like, can I keep going? And I think just, I was texting with a friend and, it was one of those moments where she was congratulating me, but she said any athlete that kept going, whether they make it the team or not, will go down in history as like badass. I mean, you committed, and there were so many, whatever obstacles were thrown. And so I'm so glad that I was able to navigate all that and keep going. Cause, in my mind, I told myself a year ago too, I said, I also saw it as bigger than me. Like what a big moment that will be when the world does get to come back together for the Olympics, that, that means that we've won the battle, at least against COVID. Like we're able to do this. And I know we're heading into, there's obviously conversation in Tokyo and there's things happening, but we have turned a corner, it feels like. And the Olympics to me can be that celebration of like, look what we've been able to do as the world, as the people, to be able to make this happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you, I like to ask people who've been to the Olympics before to take us all, because most people don't go to the Olympics, most people don't go watch the Olympics and much less compete in them. What's the moment that what's the moment where it sort of strikes you, holy cow, like I'm at the Olympics. I am is it the opening ceremony? Is it like you're shoving off the dock? Is it, what is that moment where it hits you? Holy cow, like I am at the Olympics.
Yeah. So 2 moments, but really it didn't sink in until the closing ceremonies for me. And I think because as athletes, you go in, you're so focused and you're just so, eye on the prize, or, kind of just got the blinders on.
Yep.
And there was a moment at closing ceremonies that it sort of washed over me. And it was very beautiful and cheesy. But for me, I just finally I cried. I allowed myself to register what had just happened. And that I'd gone out and did what I said I wanted to do and was able to achieve that. And thanked myself, but also just, really let it sink in. And then, during the racing, we had Ellen and I had a fantastic race in the Olympic semifinal. We were able to come from 6th into 3rd, had a big, big comeback to take that final spot into the final, beating out the 2-time world champion, Olympic gold favorites, New Zealand. And it was just that was our moment. We had a terrible final, but that also, when I look back, that's the moment I think about at the Olympics, was just literally going, just full out and blacking out and doing everything we could to put all the years of training, and then being able to just scream and celebrate and look into the stands and see our parents going insane. And, you have that moment that you dream about as you kind of fantasize about. And so those are the 2 moments for me that I think stick out and kind of, for me, register that oh yeah, that happened. I went to the Olympics.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. And I hope you do take that moment. I hope all of our rowers take that moment to kind of look around and let it sink in and appreciate, that they're there and all the work that they've done and the success they've found. So switching gears for a minute, I want to talk to you a little bit about, your many things, including a member of the U.S. Rowing Board in your spare time.
Yeah, I'm your boss, Amanda.
Yeah. So I better be careful with what I ask, right? Yeah. Careful here, Amanda. And such a good board member. So my question is, so you're aware of that. One priority I've had coming in as CEO is really working to change what rowing looks like in this country. And I think, for too long, people have thought about our sport and thought, oh, okay, white, male, now females too, but mostly for a long time was white, male, Harvard, Yale, Princeton. It was a very limited view. And there's nothing wrong with those wonderful white men who row at Harvard, Yale, Princeton. I think the goal in my mind has been, well, let's open the boathouse doors. Let's make sure that this sport that is so incredible, that teaches all of these incredible life lessons, is accessible to more people from all backgrounds and abilities. And I know we're aligned on that. I know, you've led the kickoff of the DEI committee at US Rowing, and you're, someone we can rely on to be really outspoken on this front and to say, yeah, we're going to do these things and we're not just going to talk about them. And even just last week, we did a post on Pride Month at US Rowing, and there was, leave it to social media. There's a lot of sort of feedback, shall we say, stick to rowing. Wait, I shouldn't say it like that. Stick to rowing, some people said. I want to hear about race results. US Rowing, why are you doing this? And what's kind of nice is you can leave it to the people who are supportive of Pride Month and trans rights and sports to get onto social media and have that debate. We don't need to jump in there. But I know that you and I touched base on it, and it was good to know, okay, well, we have a board member who's really supportive of this work and this messaging. And this is a long way of me asking, sort of, why do you think that we should be doing this work on the DEI front in rowing? Why is it important to talk about Pride Month? Like, why aren't we just talking about race results and Tokyo, and also extremely important, but why should we be doing these other pieces in your mind?
Yeah, no, this is a great question and so important and timely, I think, right now. And I think, it's interesting to me that, broadly speaking, that people still take up the argument of stick to X, whether it's, they're telling football players to stick to kicking, stick to throwing, stick to catching. They're telling basketball players, and that is just not the case. They are just not athletes. They are humans, and it is the full package. And what sport does is provide a sort of it's a metaphor in many ways for life. And I think it's particular to rowing it is a sport that demands community in engagement and interaction, in the sense of everyone can come and be in a boat together, and everyone should feel welcome to come and be in a boat together. And I think when we think about what U.S. Rowing, the mission of the organization it's to run the sport, but it's to create a place where everyone can participate in that sport. And that means opening the doors for all the reasons you just said. And that means being intentional about the language we're using to say that. You can't just throw up a logo, and you have to actually be intentional. You have to welcome people. You have to take a side many times in an argument. That is the reality. That's not politics. That is the reality of today. I struggle with hearing that. That is fortunately, I think it's a dwindling group of people that will be in that side of the argument, just for the reasons you said, that those comments are becoming self-moderated because other people will take a stand. But especially to come from U.S. Rowing, it's important to come from the national governing body, from the organization that's in charge of stewarding the sport in our country, because representation matters, communication and language matter. And if I see this, the head of the sport that I'm interested in, welcoming me and saying that they stand with me, I will be more likely to have confidence to continue in the sport. We have a huge dropout of women, young women in sport for all the reasons that, we tell women that they shouldn't be athletes. And then think about going narrower to LGBTQ plus people who, the messaging is that you don't belong. You shouldn't be here. And so if we can take a stand and counter that with saying, hey, we stand with you and we want anyone and everyone to be a part of our sport, that means something. And it's interesting because it's not as if we're taking something away from anyone else.
Right. I guess that's my question too is, and you're saying it so beautifully, but I guess my question is, why do you think there's pushback there? So if we're not taking anything away, why the pushback?
Fear. I mean, it's when you think about at the very root, pride is a protest. Number one, it's a protest. And when you think about the roots of protest, it's to demand equality and rights and access and all these things. And the civil rights movement, it's a protest. And the people that were against any period in our time of civil rights or social justice rights and et cetera, it's fear. Is at the root of that, because at the end of the day, nothing is being taken away from anyone else. It's only broadening the reach and making our sport better. And that's proven, right? And I think it's at the root. It's fear. It's just fear, and it's frustrating because it's a baseless argument that people throw out there.
Yeah. Well, I hope we have a lot of young people listening to this and can hear your voice and hear your messaging and think, oh, good, I am welcome in the sport. I'm seen and I'm welcome, because that's what we're trying to do. And I feel lucky to have you as a board member who really gets that and is on board with, not only on board with, but like, hell yeah, this is what we need to be saying, and this is what we need to be doing for our sport. So I feel super lucky on that front.
Yeah. We have one, last thing is we just have such an opportunity to, rowing is an old archaic sport. We're old, but there's something really special about that, but we have an opportunity to lead the way in these conversations as well. And I think I'm so excited to have you at the helm and be leading that from a, leadership position within US Rowing. And I think I feel it, a tide change. And I think that, it's just going to take a little bit more time. But I'm hopeful. I'm optimistic.
Good. I'm glad you are. You know what I feel like sometimes? I don't know if have you ever coached, Megan? Did you coach rowing at all?
Camps and clinics and stuff.
Okay. So have you ever coached novices in the wind?
Oh man.
It makes me feel like I often feel like I'm coaching a wonderful group of novice girls, we'll call them, and they just keep getting blown into the rocks, right? I'm picturing this one spot on Meadow Lake in New York City, and you okay, well, bow seat, you start rowing to pull the boat out of the rocks, and that does nothing, and so then you're okay. 3 seat out in. Like, oh no, they're not coming out of those rocks. Like nothing's changing. They're just still right there. Okay, 5 seat, you add in, and 2 seat back it. Like, let's see, maybe that'll work. And then 5 seat adds in. And you're like, wow, they're just staying still in this wind. And then, and I just have this image in my head all the time with change here at US Rowing that you're talking about. And then finally you add in 7 seat, and you're like, oh, here they go. There it is. It's not fast. It's not they're not flying out of those rocks, but
there's movement.
Yeah, they're slowly, but they're beating the wind, right? And they're coming out of it. And that's what I picture at US Rowing all the time is we're gonna find that like 7 seat, and it's gonna take that like extra little push, and suddenly we're gonna be coming out of the rocks, and that's what I end up picturing a lot. So
yeah,
thank you for being in that boat.
Well, and the great thing about rowing is we have such a vibrant junior young people are the majority of our participants. and young people are going to save the world. Like they are.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is my call to action for, the young people to help us keep changing and improving our sport, because they are the change makers.
Yes.
I mean, they're the ones doing a lot. I mean, there are plenty of, I'm old, like doing the work, but I'm forever impressed. And especially with our sport being so highly populated in terms of membership by young people, like that is where we can start to see a lot of movement.
Oh yeah. And for the record, you're not old. Just in the context of the national team, yes, then you're old. But in real life, you're not. Okay, I have one last question for you, which is really easy and fun. So you're rowing into the dock, and what are you planning as your post-race meal? What's your go-to? You can have anything. And I have to add this because, some people don't like to cook, myself included. Someone's going to make it for you. So you dock. You do have to get your boat out of the water because, we're not that fancy. But then someone has this food ready for you. What is it?
Well, I mean, I can speak in reality because I've been fortunate enough to have my partners come out from California and is here with me during this time. So she has been so lovely.
She's been feeding you.
It makes me asks, when I'm coming back, and so she's working, but she'll take the time and make an amazing, it's usually toasted sourdough with egg and avocado, a little bit of cheese. And then we have been frequenting the Gingered Peach, which is a Princeton local bakery, and it is amazing. And they have these incredible cinnamon rolls. So if I want to treat myself, I'll have a little cheat and have a sweet, a little bite. We'll say bite. Well, not a full cinnamon roll, but yeah.
Really? You don't eat the full cinnamon roll?
No, I'm lying. I would just go, I'll go ham for sure.
I had you all wrong. Just I'll have a nibble of the cinnamon roll. Yeah, you eat the whole damn cinnamon roll, right?
Yeah.
You should.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I thought I had you all wrong, and I'm glad she's feeding you.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I've been well taken care of.
Good.
But love a good avocado toast with egg, yogurt with fruit and nuts and granola. Second breakfast is definitely a fave.
Yeah, I still subscribe to that, and I really shouldn't because,
No.
You can't do that when you're my workout. I actually often think what I just did for my workout would be their warm up. No second breakfast when you're not training you are. So, Meghan, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you as always. And I'm so glad that other people get the chance to get to know you some. And I am not alone in saying we are all going to be screaming our heads off and so proud, no matter what happens in Tokyo on that water. We're already all so proud.
Well, thank you. No, this has been fun. And thank you for all the work you're doing. I'm excited to be a part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. That was Meghan O'Leary. Next, I spoke to Clark Dean, the stroke of the U.S. coxless 4. Clark was the first American in 50 years to win the junior world title in the junior men's single, and in 2018, he set a new world best time while successfully defending his title. Hi, Clark. Welcome to the swing of things.
Hey, Amanda. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Did you row this morning?
We did. We do pieces Wednesday morning. So piece this morning and now have the afternoon off.
Oh, that's nice. What do you do with your afternoon off?
That's a great question.
You can be honest. If it's just that you lay on the couch.
Yeah. I mean, most of the fall and then the spring, it was, homework and class and stuff that was productive. Now it's a bit more, I think I'm going to try to get my oil changed to my car today. It's kind of, I take it week by week.
Here you have it, folks. The real lives of elite athletes. Big plans.
Very exciting.
Right. Okay. You don't have someone who does that for you yet?
Not yet. Maybe next cycle we'll figure that out.
Right. Great. And then you just finished your sophomore year at Harvard, right? So you were balancing rowing and school.
Yeah. So the what was supposed to be the Olympic year, 1920, I did take a gap year. And then after the games were postponed, I decided, regardless of what happens, I would go ahead and start school. And it just so happened that it was virtual, which worked out really well because I could just stay out here, keep training with the team. So yeah, I was enrolled full time this past fall, and then just this spring was just finished up. So got done with my sophomore year, and I'm going to go back as a junior now.
Wow. Okay. And in person, you'll go in person.
Yeah, that's what they say. And the Harvard's plans right now is going to be at full capacity in person, live classes. So we'll see. I'm optimistic.
Okay. And what are you studying?
I'm classics. I just declared.
Oh,
yeah.
Very nice. I was an English major, so,
Oh, nice. Humanities got to stick together. There's not many of us.
Yeah,
anymore.
we sure do. And anyone who says, what are you going to do with that degree? You tell them.
Anything.
Yes.
Be the CEO of U.S. Rowing. Look at you.
Yeah. Look, living the
Nothing
dream.
Nothing to do with English. Well, maybe.
So I have a few questions to start off with. First of all, tell us a little bit about you and your family. Do you have siblings?
Yeah, so I'm from Sarasota, Florida. I have 3 siblings. I have an older brother who's a couple years older than me, and then identical twin younger sisters who are a couple years younger. And we're definitely not a rowing family. My dad never really played sports. He grew up in North Carolina. And then my mom, she grew up outside of Philly. She swam and played lacrosse, but really had no interaction with rowing whatsoever. But I guess all of my siblings and we all started rowing just because Sarasota Crew, the local club team in Sarasota, was, I think it's literally 1.5 miles from the school that I went to from elementary through high school. And basically everyone at my school rowed at some point just to try it out because Sarasota did a really good job of recruiting from Pineview. And there are no school sports at Pineview. So it was the closest thing we had to a sports team for my high school was the rowing team.
No school sports?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like a weird kind of situation where you weren't technically districted towards it. You had to you applied to get in, and then it's like kind of a public charter school thing. I don't know the details.
It worked out.
Bureaucracy, yeah.
And so when you first were you wait, how tall are you now as a grown up?
I'm like 6'4.5" right now.
Okay, all right. So they must have been excited when you walked in.
Yeah, I used to be. I guess when I joined, I was probably still pretty tall, kind of skinny and like gangly, but
That obviously worked out well. I mean, you won the Junior World Championships in 2017. That's right. Do I have that year right?
Yeah, 17 and 18.
And then again in 18. And you were the first American since Jim Dietz, right? To win that?
Yeah. Well, it, technically, I have to say this, doesn't matter to me. It technically wasn't the World Championships when he won it. Not trying to start any beef, but
right. I'm gonna tell him you said that. He was my college coach, so we're in.
I don't care either way. I mean, first in 50 years is like fine with me, but that's the kind of thing that like my mom will argue with anybody about.
So that you were technically the first,
right? And she would listen to this. She's going to listen to this, and she'll give me crap for not saying that it wasn't actually the World Championships.
Good. Well, you got to listen to your mom. I'm with her.
Yeah,
I'm with her.
Exactly.
What did Jim win then?
I don't even remember. After 2017, I could tell you, but it was essentially the World Championships, but it wasn't called that. It was called something else.
Okay.
And that's the extent of it. That's the extent of my knowledge of the controversy, if you can call it that.
I'll check with your mom.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, but always go with what the mom says. I'm with her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then you did it again in 2018. I mean, that's just phenomenal. I mean, what did you think was going to happen when you went into that first World Championships in the single in 2017? Where did you think you would finish up?
Yeah, so that year I double raced actually. So I was in the cox 4 in the single, and people would ask me, and whenever someone asks what your goal is, you have to say win or medal, or else you sound like you don't even back yourself. But I mean, realistically, I was thinking like just do the best I can, and then come back next year and do better. And that's because there's no way to tell. I'd really not raced the single at all. I'd raced at Stotesbury that year, and that was pretty much my only race, and that's a 1500 on the Schuylkill, so it's not really in the same ballpark. So I went in just thinking, okay, I'll do the best I can. And then after I won the heat and beat some of the some of the favored people, I was like, okay, I could actually do pretty well here, I think. And then I haven't really looked back since. And
did you have a big erg at the time when you won that World Championship?
I think big for a junior, maybe not that big anymore. I was right under 6. I think the guy who got second, Moritz Wolf, the German, he was a little bit quicker. He was 5:58 or so. So I don't think I was the strongest person in the field. Maybe the second. I'm not sure if there were other guys under 6 then, but
that's kind of wild.
I think I was around the mark.
Okay. Yeah. I did not realize that you'd only raced once in the single. That must have been a really unbelievable feeling. And then where do you go? So you were also in the 4. did you race twice a day then? I mean, how did that work between heats and?
Basically going into that summer after 2016, where I raced in the quad at juniors, I really, I wanted to double race the next year. And I thought it made sense for some guys to double race because, two boats specifically, the 8 and the coxed 4, you're basically racing at most 3 times. And if you go through the heat, in good form, you only race twice over basically a week. And in 2016, I saw that and I was like, oh, I mean, at that point, I wasn't really that good at all. It probably wouldn't have been great for me that year if I had to double race. But in general, I think, throwing on 2 more races over a 7-day period isn't super taxing or is not taxing enough to, make somebody not make the boat faster, I guess. So going into 2017, I share that with Casey, my coach, and then the other J&T coaches, and they all kind of agreed. And I wanted to race the single, but the thing is, the single races a ton. So I had to pick, a boat that did not race a bunch, and the 8 didn't work scheduling wise, because the 8 and the single are basically back to back on that last day, where the coxed 4 is super early in the morning. So it worked out super well. I only raced once a day up until the last day on Sunday, where I raced the final for both of them on the same day, which was, it was a pretty tough turnaround. It was only a few hours in between, or a couple hours in between.
Which was first?
The coxed 4 was first. The coxed 4 was early in the morning because the singles, like the third to last race generally goes like the women and men's single, then the women and men's 8.
So you raced the coxed 4 and then you won the world championships in the single later in the day.
Yeah, in 2017.
That's wild. So now you're stroking the 4 going into the Olympics. Do you have I mean, everyone of course is always wondering, is he going to go back? Is he going to go back to the single? Is he going to, will you go back to sculling? I'd love to just hear a little bit about, where's your favorite place to be? Is it the single? Is it stroking a 4? Is it in the middle of an 8? I mean, where are you most happy?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, I can maybe say it's a tough question to answer, because there's a difference between training in those seats versus racing in those seats versus being in a place logistically where you can train with a competitive group of guys, right? And then you also have to take into account your chances of winning or medaling or qualifying for the Olympics in each of these boats. So it's a pretty it's a complicated answer, and I think I'm just taking it year by year. And in 2019, after my freshman year, like, I thought it was best for me to go to the training center and try to make a sweep boat, because I had just been sweeping the whole year with Harvard, and I hadn't really, I'd been sculling here and there, but nowhere near as much as sweeping. And then in 2019, when I went in the 4 the first time and we qualified that, and then the 8 also qualified, it kind of seemed like it would make sense to just go back, try to make the boat again, try to do a little bit better and get a medal. Net with the postponement, it kind of threw a wrench into the works, but being able to be online for school, it kind of didn't, because I just thought, okay, it made sense last year. I think it still makes sense this year. I think this is my best shot of going to the Olympics, my best shot of getting a medal. And I didn't have to sacrifice much. And moving forward, it's going to be different because I'm going to be at school again. And then, I'm not sure. I could very well see myself coming back out to the training center in the summers. Maybe I start rowing with someone else and we go in a double or a pair through trials, or I just do the single trials. I mean, I think it's gonna depend on a lot of things, and where I see myself fitting in best and helping out, with the medal count the best.
Yeah. Okay. And what's it like being at the training center? I mean, for most people, they just have no idea what that culture is like, or that, that lifestyle is like. Can you give us some highlights of, what is that like to be an athlete in the training center? And you're in Oakland, for people who don't know. Right.
Yeah. So I'm in Oakland with the men's sweep, and it's pretty interesting, actually. I don't think it's not what I expected, because, in the fall, it's a lot more lax than I expected, because I think one thing that Mike and Tim, our coaches, do a really good job with is, they're flexible in the way that, they're going to accommodate people. Right. So basically, I mean, about a year ago, exactly, actually, when Harvard came out and said that it was going to be online, and I knew I was going to be enrolled. I told them, I was like, I'm going to be taking classes. It's going to be online. I can be out there and row, but I have no idea if I'm going to be able to row twice a day, once a day, once a day most days, some afternoons. I have no idea what the workload's going to be like, especially since it's virtual. It's really, I just have no clue what it's going to be like, but I can be out there. And, I think in a lot of systems, the coaches would say, forget it. You're on your own, it's not going to work. But I mean, Mike and Tim from day one, they're like, yeah, just come out here, row when you can. And then when you can't, like, that's fine. And I mean, that's how it worked. So, I mean, in the fall, I was taking probably like 2 classes that had too large of a workload to begin with. But, most days I was rowing once in the morning, and then, in the afternoons, maybe I'd do a workout on my own, but that was basically it. Where I really can't think of any other country that has a competitive sweep team that has both boats qualified where there's any kind of flexibility resembling that.
Right.
And that's not just for me. I mean,
all of the guys.
Basically everybody on the team they have jobs, they have girlfriends, fiancés. I think the coaches do a really good job of making the guys feel like we don't have to give up a lot to be out here. We don't have to put our lives on hold quite as much as the guys in these other countries, in the other systems.
Yeah. So you were just, it sounds like some days you were just training in the mornings. I have to say, we were listening to, my husband and I were watching you in a interview with, I'm forgetting his name. He's British.
Martin Kraus.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Martin. And you were talking about how you went home. Maybe it was right after you left school when COVID began. And you said you basically took a month or 2 off. And I thought, oh, he's sort of a normal human. And then you started to describe your workout regimen. And you said, we both laughed when you said, yeah, and I would just go run, I would just go for a really long run or just a long swing on the erg. I don't remember exactly what you said, but it was basically like much more than the average human does was your time off. But I guess that's how it goes, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I think, after the games were postponed, I think a lot of people were at all levels were kind of struggling to stay training at that same level because they're like, what am I training for? Is it going to be Head of the Charles in the fall? Is it going to be racing in the spring? Is it going to be Head of the Charles the next year? I mean, I think it was easy for me actually compared to a lot of the guys on the team because, if I was cut or the games were canceled and not postponed or anything like that, I'd still row. I'd go back to school and I'd keep rowing and I'd keep trying to row at the highest level possible. So I think from my point of view, it was never, there was never a question of being done with the sport and retiring, which helped. And then I think once I broke that down, I thought logically like, okay, maybe Head of Charles will happen. If that happens, I want to be training full on probably in August, right? To be at least in decent shape ahead of the Charles. And realistically, I started, rowing in the single and erging and training for real before that. But yeah, I mean, I went home after it was postponed. Took a while. I worked remotely a lot. Started to try to save up money for this year. And I mean, like you said, in the afternoons I'd go on a bike or a run, or sometimes I'd go take a long row in a single. But pretty relaxed compared to what I think most rowers would imagine the Olympic training load is generally like.
Yeah. What do you guys do now? Like, what's a typical workout?
Yeah, I think generally we've been rowing basically twice a day, at least 4 times a week, and then doing pieces on Wednesdays and Saturdays in the mornings. Then potentially an afternoon, like a light afternoon swing row on Saturdays or Sundays as well. And then now we're doing hot yoga 3 times a week to start getting acclimated to Tokyo weather conditions. Idea. So yeah, so the number of hours at the boathouse are devoted to rowing have been going up definitely, especially since the fall. But I mean, that's to be expected, and it would be pretty concerning if it wasn't. So no one's complaining. We're all, we're here for our jobs.
Right. Right. How do you feel about hot yoga?
Yeah, it's interesting. Since I'm from Sarasota and it is super hot there, I totally agree that, if Tokyo is as hot as it has been historically, when we're there, which is essentially the exact same temperature and humidity as Sarasota in the summer, we need to do something to we need to be ready when we get there, because even over the summer, like, when I went home and I started trying to ergance, like, you'd literally be 5 or 6 splits slower on the same steady state workout, and your heart rate would be 40 beats higher. Like, those are actual numbers that aren't exaggerated, so it is significant. And it's potentially less significant for a short race that's about 6 minutes compared to doing hour-long steady state workouts, but it is significant. And even if it's just thinking about that and spending time in heat here, even if we're not rowing, and I mean, we're trying to now, we erg with no fans and the doors closed and the boat bays, and we're just trying to be a little bit more comfortable being uncomfortable.
You're all
in
vaccinated,
the heat, which
right?
I think is yeah, everyone on the team's been vaccinated for a while.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. You just close all the doors, turn off the fans.
Yeah. Exactly. No ventilation.
Do you guys all do the hot yoga together? Is anyone having a hard time with it? Because I find hot yoga is very difficult. I find any yoga is difficult, but especially hot yoga.
Yeah, we've been doing it together. I think it's definitely, when selection first ended and we went right to training, there was a kind of a hiccup in the guys' physiology, me included, where we went from, every row was, getting ready to race, getting ready to piece, getting ready to do selection. You're just trying to like be at your best every day, compared to go to training and, we're probably rowing 3 or 4 times more a week. We're now doing hot yoga 3 times a week. When we're on the erg and the water's too bad, it's, an actual training session compared to almost just like maintenance, getting ready for the next day of pieces. And I think after the first couple of weeks, guys' bodies were pretty surprised, mine included, because it had been so long of selection and kind of this, being ready to go any day there was, compared to this now just solid training block. And I think guys were pretty tired and fatigued after a couple of weeks, but now everyone's back. I mean, there was a few times where we would do lighter rows or take off a day of yoga because guys were just so exhausted, whether it's dehydration or, actually muscular wise. But now everyone's back. Everyone's feeling good, knock on wood. And I think we're definitely in the best shape we've been in going into the last few weeks before we get to Japan.
Good. That's exciting. And you guys can do some yoga.
Exactly. Yeah, super flexible.
So speaking of Japan, what are you, this is obviously not going to be our typical Olympics, and, no family or friends there, which is, I'm sure, disappointing. But what are you most excited about when you think about this experience going into Tokyo? Is there anything that just keeps running through your mind?
Yeah. Like you said, it's definitely not going to be a normal Olympics, even though that wouldn't be not normal for me since I've never been. But yeah, I mean, definitely the thing that we're thinking about the most and most excited for is the rowing and the racing. Now more than ever, we're going there on a mission, and, it's not going to be a vacation, even if we wanted it to be, with the COVID protocols, with everything, it's not going to be a vacation. Hopefully I have fun. I'm not expecting it to be fun. I'm expecting to go and, be laser focused with the rest of my boat. And we're just going to, we're going there to try to get a medal. And, then the way I see it, then after that, I get a few weeks before I go back to school, and then that can be the kind of vacation aspect of my summer.
There you go.
But until then, I think that the focus is just the rowing and the racing.
Do you come straight back after Tokyo?
Yeah, well, with the COVID protocol, you have to be out of the country within 48 hours. So
right.
Yeah, not really up to me on that one, but I'll be back in the States pretty quickly after I'm done racing.
Yeah. Well, no one will forget the I don't know if they'll be referred to as the COVID Olympics. Hopefully not, but sorry if they are. So I only have a couple more questions for you. One is around, you're the youngest guy on the team. You've already had so much success in the sport. What advice do you have for, kids coming up through high school, just starting out and rowing and thinking, oh my goodness, I would love to be, one day going to the Olympics? And do you have any advice for them? Yeah.
I mean, I think, and you kind of answered my hypothetical question that I'm posing to them in my answer, but I think it's really important, whatever level of rowing you're at, to really make your goals as concrete and the least abstract possible. Like if your goals are to go to the Olympics, you have to train like an Olympian. And if you're if your goal is to, win youth nationals, then you have to train for that. And, these things don't happen overnight. But I think, you have to be honest with yourself about what you want to get out of the sport. And then, shoot for that. And then you got to be on the same page with your boat as well. If you're in a boat with people who aren't training as hard as you are, and you have different goals, and you all have different priorities, it's going to be really frustrating. And I think communication with your coach for what your goals are, and communication with your boat mates for what your goals are, is super important at every level.
Yeah. And speaking of coaches, who do you think have been the most like influential coaches for you in any sport? It doesn't have to be rowing, and it can be, all the way back to middle school. And who do you think, been most influential?
I haven't had that many coaches, actually. I mean, in rowing, I've really had, I had basically two coaches at Sarasota, Caitlin Crouch, who was the varsity men's coach, and then Casey, who was kind of the head coach for both teams, Casey Galvanack. And then, at the junior level, Casey was my coach all 3 years. Chris Chase coached the Cox 4 in 2017, so he was another coach. So now I'm up to 3 by the time I got to college. And then Harvard has 3 coaches, Charlie Butt, Jesse Folia, and then Pat LePage, and all 3 of them are great. I definitely learned from, at this point, the 6 coaches I've had. And then coming out here, only really had 2 more coaches, which are Mike Tatey and Tim McLaren. And then, I learned something from them too. So, you can count the number of rowing coaches I've had on, 2 hands, I guess, but they definitely, some of them are pretty similar. Some of them are pretty different, but all of them definitely bring something to the table that, being young, I feel like I'm trying to just catch up with all the experience and knowledge that all of these coaches are kind of dumping on me. I'm trying to just absorb it as quickly as possible. And, I like to think I have a pretty open mind, and I'm open to listening to and hearing about these coaches' experiences when, Charlie Butt's been coaching at Harvard, since well before I was born. So I think he's going to know how crews race, things about the boathouse, things about the training. And it applies to all these coaches. They all just know so much more than I do, just by virtue of me being 21. And they've all been super influential, super helpful, and hopefully I think they've given me a little bit of a more perspective on the sport.
Yeah. And you're finally 21, huh?
Yeah. I had my birthday at our Chula Vista camp.
Oh.
In our bubble. That's how you do it.
Oh, there you go. Your first beer. Yeah, I know mom's listening. So So my last question for you, which I've been asking everybody, is what's your go-to post row meal? So you're coming into the dock. What's your go-to favorite thing? And someone else can make it for you. So don't worry about, how you procure this meal.
The prep. Yeah. I really like pasta. And when you're eating pasta compared to something like a salad, within a few bites, you can start to feel somewhat full, where salad, I feel like you're like sometimes burning more calories chewing it than you are.
It's a real effort.
Actually swallowing. Yeah. I was going to say it depends on like if it's afternoon row or morning row, but like I like breakfast foods, but I'll have pasta in the mornings for sure. Oh. So, I'd say pasta. I like chicken, any kind of like chicken parm, chicken piccata, I like rice, fried rice. I've been, now that I'm done with school and kind of just rowing and hanging out, I've been trying to become a little bit better of a cook. So I've been trying to find some recipes online. So I'll get back to you. My specialty is chicken piccata right now. I hope my dinner club will stick up for me and saying that it's like, it's not bad. I'm getting there.
Classics in cooking.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. That's great. All right. Well, I hope we probably won't have much pasta in Tokyo, but maybe when you come back.
Rice.
You will have
probably.
rice.
I'm
yes,
assuming.
You will.
Yeah. Or noodles in general. I don't know.
Yeah.
You'll have some. I don't know enough to speak on it.
Have you been working on your Japanese?
No, I've not. I just saw a link today about there's a like beginners class that we're all invited to take online.
Clark, you have to represent, and you're done with school, so you have some time. So
I'll check it out.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, it's been such a pleasure speaking with you. We're so lucky to have you on our team and representing the United States. And I know everyone will be cheering for you and watching that 4 go down the course.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's been fun. It's nice, having a more personal conversation with you. And yeah, I think we're all pretty excited to go, pretty excited to train, get the boat as fast as possible, and then hopefully, get a good result.
Great. Well, good luck to you.
All right. Thank you.
And that's all for this episode of The Swing of Things. I hope you've enjoyed hearing from our national team athletes. In our next episode, I'm joined by 2 individuals ready to race in the US 8s at Tokyo. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, share, and follow from wherever you get your podcasts. It will help others to find us. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. Please get in touch at The Swing of Things